Steve, thank you for that song, and it was really kind of commenting on Bill's point. It was I took it as a challenge that I hope that I would be able to recognize Jesus if I saw him. So, yeah. That's the idea, I think. Well, good morning. Here we are once again. Yeah, and we want to continue this morning. We're going to be looking at Asher, the blessing to Asher this morning. And we're going to draw a correlation, comparison actually, between what we talked about last week with Gad and Asher. I kind of drew a comparison there, so we're going to look at that. Here's our master slide. You see that every week. I won't make any comments on that, but it kind of brings us back to square one every week. Well, by way of review, I took the feedback from last week, remember, over table time, and I put it together in a 8-part list here. We talked about Gad's example last week, and we came up with the question that we discussed at our tables. And that question was, what causes a person to choose the more difficult path? Remember, Gad is the one of the two sons that wanted to settle on the other side of Jordan, east of Jordan. They call it Transjordan. And it really kind of torqued Moses off from the beginning. But after dialogue, Moses gave him permission, but he says, you've got to help us settle our land first and then go. So kind of a delayed gratification. And Gad was the fellow who chose the more difficult path. We discussed it at the table, and why causes a person to choose a more difficult path? And some of the responses you guys came up with was, well, number one, we don't know. You know, we don't get to project ahead and peer into the future, and so we simply don't know that it's a more difficult path. The hope of reward, delayed gratification. I think that would be Gad's motivation. Personal values, that a person who I can't go that way because of my belief system. I think that's certainly valid. Competitive spirit. I want to do it my way. So the idea. Actually, competitive would be not so much my way, but it would be, in a sense, I want to choose something different than you. In a competitive environment, there's always a you. There's always the other. Rebellion would be another one. You guys separated 7 and 8, and I kind of see them together. But self-improvement would be a reason, and I would cast it as a subset of that. Would be 8. Discipline and training would be a type of self-improvement that I choose to, like an athlete, an athlete in training. The athlete in training has to discipline his or her body in order to compete, and so they choose the more difficult path in order to do that. That would be, so that's what you guys came up with last week in the summary. I told you I promised you last week. Would somebody read Genesis 49 and verse 20? That's the text for this morning.
As for Asher, his food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal dainties.
Okay, again, speaking, thank you, Bob. And Asher, one verse, just like Gad, one verse. Both are in the third person. Asher, his food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal dainties. 30,000-foot view, the idea, the giving and the receiving of affluence. Way different than the other blessings. The giving and the receiving of affluence. He consumes rich foods, and he gives out choice dainties, giving and receiving.
Lose.
What's that?
Lose.
Lose.
Dainties. Rich dainties.
Oh, lose. Okay. So that's all I have to say about that. Let's look at his birth background, just like we have been for the other sons. The birth background is Genesis 30, 12, and 13. Asher is the second son of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, the 8th son of Jacob. His name means happy. And again, it's within the context of the birth competition. And she says, I am happy because I've given birth to a son. And so his name is connected with happiness. However, I find no connection between Asher's birth context and Asher the man. As far as the name happy, I'm not able to find any connection with Asher within the Asher the man, the son, with the name man. That is not the case with other sons. We certainly see their birth context is correlating heavily, but I couldn't make a connection here. So we're moving on. We're looking for meaning here. So we look first at his birth context. Secondly, Asher's tribal allocation. Now again, this would be 400 plus years, in the future, but Asher's tribal location is way north in what it would be what's Lebanon today, and including, you've heard of the biblical cities Tyre and Sidon. Well, that's Asher coastal area, and the background is Joshua 19:24 through 31. Would someone turn to Deuteronomy 33, verses 24 and 25, and prepare to read that? And then another person turn to Judges 1:32, and then I'll read that after we read the Deuteronomy. So could somebody read Deuteronomy 33, 24 and 25? This will give us some background of Asher the tribe.
And of Asher he said, Asher is the most blessed of sons. Let him be favored by his brothers, and let him dip his foot in oil. Your sandals shall be iron and bronze. As your days, so shall your strength be.
Okay, good. All right, now let's go on to Judges 132. Turn on your phones and
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
So the Asherites lived among the Canaanites, inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out.
Okay, so what we're seeing is Gene's words. Okay, first of all, do you see a correlation between those two texts? As we're reading about a description of Asher, do you see, what do you see?
He seems to be prospering by getting along with the local tribes.
Yeah, he's getting along. That's in the Judges text. The other is you'll dip your heel in oil. The idea of prosperity. Again, it's really in correlation to the blessing. We're seeing it at the tribal level of prosperity, blessing. They're living at peace. I've got it here. According to the Deuteronomy and the Judges text, Asher was promised a life of ease. He's more blessed than all the sons. Blessed, I think it says more blessed than all the sons. At least in this sense. Is that what it says, Gene?
Yes. Most blessed of sons.
Yeah. Asher was promised a life of ease. The tribal people lived among the Canaanites, not forcing the Canaanites to relocate elsewhere. That's kind of interesting. There is no direct biblical comment whether the example is a compliment or a criticism directly to Asher. Yes, Bill?
I don't know, but they eventually become, if that becomes Phoenicia, that becomes a seafaring nation. They're traders. They will trade all over the Mediterranean and prosper in doing so.
Yeah. And so in this case, we're seeing now at the tribal level. Remember, we're looking at Asher the man, Asher the tribe, yet future, and then the nation of Israel. How we're trying to correlate this blessing from Jacob to his son Asher. See, where do we find meaning? We certainly find some correlation here. That Asher, life of ease, living at peace, and enjoying the delicacies and the fine things of life. Asher's summary: in contrast to his brother Gad, And we're talking at the tribal level now, not the man, the tribal level. Asher, the tribe, my summary is he embraced his inheritance. Nice place up there, coastal area. I have not been up in Lebanon. I've been to the border between Israel and Lebanon, but I haven't been up into Lebanon.
That's all the farther you can go. Now they have a big fence there and guards and everything else.
Remember, right on the coast, I was at a gate right on the coast.
Right on the coast.
Yeah.
But Lebanon in recent years, I'm talking in the last 100 or whatever years before the conflict, it was known as a sort of a Mediterranean playground. It was a very attractive place to go, right?
Paris
on Mediterranean.
Paris on, yeah. What, and guys, this sounds a crazy question. What is the main city? Beirut, Lebanon. That's where
Before it
the,
was torn apart. It
yeah,
was
right,
the
yeah,
destination.
right. Okay, so how I summarized Asher is, in contrast to Gad, I'm putting a comparison here. In contrast to Gad, Asher kind of just, he went with the flow, lived at peace with others, enjoyed the finer things of life. Now, the primal question as we're reading this is, gee, I know from my knowledge of the scripture that especially in Joshua, they were to drive out the Canaanites. He did not drive out the Canaanites. There is not a judgment here, but was that good or bad? What color hat does Asher have? A white hat or a black hat? That is the question that is before us today. And all of us will get a chance to answer that because we're going to have a table time. And what's that?
Yes.
No, not a test. It's not a test. It's a dialogue. It's a discussion. And hopefully we don't all agree, Carl. Hopefully we'll have some fun with this. So it's your thoughts, and I'm going to explain this briefly, hand these out, and then I'm going to shut the camera off and the recorder because I've got to get to Denver. Bob and I are going to catch an airplane today, so we're going to let you guys finish up and just lock the house when you leave, okay? So Gad and Asher represent two opposing life strategies as illustrated below. And I'll explain that in a minute. Where on this continuum, what location on this continuum would you plot your current life strategy? So this is what I have. Gad is over here on the left, and he represents, we talked about Gad last week, the idea of delayed gratification as a life strategy. I'm going to sacrifice now with the hope of a reward, some sort of reward in the future. And now correlating that to our beliefs as Christians, we believe in a reward to some degree, however we define that, to come. And in a sense, it calls us to a current lifestyle now, which for many of us involves sacrifice. So delayed gratification. I live life now with the hope. And Steve, could I ask you to hand these out? Yeah, everybody gets one. I live my life now with the hope of future reward. So there's that. So if that really is you would rate yourself a G3, a Gad 3. If it's mostly true of you, you would be a Gad 2. A Gad 2 or a Gad 1 if you're moving towards middle. Notice, guys, no cop-out here. There is no center line. You can't say I'm totally balanced, okay?
GA1.
What's that?
GA1.
Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. No. Okay, well then on the other side, we're comparing or contrasting. Asher is one who I loosely summarized as he goes with the flow. You know, live life now to its fullest. Enjoy the delicacies, the dainties of life, the affluence. Go ahead and enjoy it. It's coming my way. Why should I fight it? But embrace it. Live life now, because now is all I have. That's how I put it. No, you don't like that, but
No, you have a very biased audience here now. There's an awful lot of us are retired.
Well,
I mean, we have a like view, but in terms of like now we're at that other end, and I could suffer more now if I wanted to or not, but you know, I'm tired. I'm not working. And that
Well-
is a luxury.
well, that plays on the answer to the question. We're not all in. Most of us are in a similar context, but that's not true of everyone if they would do this. So there's no right and wrong here. But I'd like for you to think about where would you plot yourself on this at this current stage of life. You could talk about, I plotted myself here because this, and if you want to be a little more transparent, you might say, well, it kind of disturbs me a little bit, or it doesn't disturb me, or I wish I would be over here. But I'll let you guys do that at table time to talk about. You're free to say or not say whatever you wish. And please explain to your group why you plotted yourself at this particular location. If you would at least, do that and just have some fun with it. And, there's coffee and donuts and apples and I had planned to be done at 7:15, so we can get rolling here and have a good week, and we'll be back next week. So I'm going to shut this
I'll be
down.
here next week.
Yeah, so that means we gotta have somebody else do donuts.
Is it too nosy to ask you what you're up to?
Oh, I'm going to Atlanta. Bob and I are going to Atlanta because we're going to work. There's a group of guys there that want to start a similar camp that we're involved with here, and they want to name it Christ in the Smokies, and they would like for us to help them.
Wow.
So we're going to, the board here has put together an alignment of values, and tomorrow we're going to have a long meeting. We're going to talk about how we could maybe work together on this. So,
All right.
yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thanks
Yeah.
for the update.
Yeah.
Have a good trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be blessed.
All right, guys. Have a good week.
Good.
You ready?
Okay.